Hey guys, we have the patch 12.1 meta snapshot for teamfight tactics, and it's going to be a little bit different this week because I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. All these comp things, what's going to matter a lot more than this is what you get in the early game. So the early game, it's just all about getting either a mercenary start, which is the best one, I think, a Yordle start, and then win streaking. A way to guarantee a lot of lost LP is to go something like no streak in the early game. So you have to be really careful about how you play the early game and the mid game in this patch. So with that in mind, the comps still matter to some extent, but it's mainly dictated by your items and what you get in the roll down. I see a lot of players, they get like a silver augment in the beginning of the game, and then they kind of like don't mind too much about it and mainly focus on getting like a really good comp or just using that silver augment to win streak, or to get econ like we just talked about. Of course, that doesn't mean always do that, but it's just like the main focus of the patch right now. It's just like, do you have mercenaries and can you cash out? So in the S tier, like all the S and A tiers right now, I'd say they're like very, very similar in strength. Again, it's gonna depend on your items. You have a lot of tiers and rods. You probably are not gonna go for the Yone comp. You'll probably go for the Innovator, Socialite, or the Arcanist build instead. If you have like no attack speed items, like of course you cannot go this comp, but let's say you could maybe go for snipers if you have a lot of swords, for example. So A tiers are going to be the Innovator. This is like the ice cream build that people have been talking about. Socialite is still working out pretty fine, just because Kaisa is still really OP. Syndicate, they made a rise up. A lot of more people are playing them, so they're not like quite S tier. But they are definitely really strong. Akali is really solid in the late game. Shaco 3 is also good. So Syndicates are good if you want to play one comp, but kind of flex between different carries. Arcanists, this is the classic Lux build. Super, super good right now. I think this is one of like the best value comps right now. Value as in not too many people are playing it, but it's really, really strong compared to how many people are playing it. Chemtech Urgot, this one is the complete opposite of the Arcanist build. It is probably the lowest value comp out of the S and A tiers because it is being played a lot, but I don't think it's that strong to justify being played that much. Lastly, we have snipers. Snipers are just weird. You have to figure out how many assassins are in your game. Snipers are great for like top 4ing. It's pretty hard to win with them because they get outscaled by the legendary comps such as Kaisa, and they also get wiped out by all the Syndicate and Assassin players. In the B tier, we still have Katarina. It's still like a viable option. I prefer playing Katarina to go into the Syndicate build though, because Katarina uses pretty much the same exact items as Akali. So you don't really need to worry too much about switching items if you are going for the Akali build from the Katarina start. But if you want to reroll Akali instead of pushing for level 8 or 9, perfectly fine option if you get a lot of Katarinas and don't have to spend too much gold on it. Next up, we have Imperial. I see both a lot of Samira and Talon carry. It's kind of equal between the two. On paper, I think Samira is better, but if you get the good Talon game, definitely go for it. Protector reroll, this is like just depending on your augments, whether you could go this comp or not. You really need like first aid kit or maybe some of the Protector augments, and you definitely want like a good mutant trait for Kog'Maw there. Tristana reroll, this is just, if you get a lot of Tristanas, it's pretty viable. You could also use this to pivot into other builds, so that's why I keep it here. And also, a lot of people are playing Yordle, so if you are playing Yordles, you get a ton of Tristanas from that for some random reason with attack damage items. Definitely something to explore there. Mutant Malzahar, I did a pretty big update on the guide for this comp, and I list out like what items to go for based on what mutant trait you have, so we'll get into that later. Scrap I bumped up to the B tier. It's pretty good. It's just not as like strong as it was like maybe 2 weeks ago, because I think 2 weeks ago I rated it in the A tier. Last week it was kind of in the C tier, but I think it's going to make a comeback, and that is the brief summary for this week. The C tiers, you can of course still play them. They're just played a lot less than everything else up here, and I'd say for this week, definitely stick to the S and A tiers because look at how many options there are. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 options in the S and A tier, so you could probably just stick with those and never play anything below that and do just fine. So now let's get into the builds. Yone, nothing's honestly changed here. You want like one defensive item and then Runon's Last Whisper on Yone. It could be QSS or Guardian Angel for the defensive item. I list out QSS here because oftentimes like you don't have enough swords to build 2 Guardian Angels because Fiora also likes Guardian Angel as well. You could also do like full damage Fiora, go like Bloodthirster, Titan's Resolve, and like IE or something like that. You don't need the GA on her, but I do like it. Academy Spatula is going to be her very best item. If you do get the Academy Spat, go for 4 Academy. Do like a 4 Challenger, 4 Academy build. You'll be pretty happy that you did. Kai'Sa's going to be holding the Morello. You could also do like full-on Kai'Sa carry if you have the right items for her. So you could swap the GA that you built earlier, put it on Kai'Sa with the Morello, get her to 2-star. She'll carry really hard with like 6 Challengers for sure. I just don't list out Kai'Sa as the primary carry here because most games it's going to be Yone and you use like Fiora or Kai'Sa as your secondary carry. But if you get 2-star Kai'Sa, for sure make her your primary if you have the right items for it. Next build up, we have the Ice Cream Innovator build. The reason why it's called Ice Cream is because you have the Chalice of Powers down here. Some people call it like the Bing Chillin build as well. And yeah, it's just ice cream stacking because you are allowed to buff Seraphine's ability power a lot. It's really good if you want to like win streak the early game because this item's pretty good in the early game also. And you could flex this with a lot of other different comps such as the Socialite build, which we'll get into in just a bit. But yeah, like most popular version of this is either 5 Innovators or 4 Scholars. So if you're going the Scholar version, drop out all these crappy Innovator units that you see here. So don't need Zillion, don't need Heimer, don't need Ezreal, and just play like good units instead, such as the 4 Scholars that we talked about. That would be Yuumi and Zyra added into what you already see here. If the Socialite Hex is on a good square, you could go ahead and play Taric. And good Socialite Hexes is pretty much anything in the back row. But if the Socialite Hex is in the corner, you have to be careful about Blitzcrank, so you'll either need a Quicksilver on Seraphine or like a Trap Claw on your Orianna, or whoever's holding all the ice creams. As for people to hold ice cream, if you have a lot of tanks, you could use Jace to hold ice cream. Orianna's decent, Heimer's decent, Janna's decent, like pretty much anyone can hold the ice cream. But I do prefer Orianna in most cases. Items for Seraphine are pretty flexible. You see the Archangels, Morello, and Spear of Shojin here. I think these are the 3 best, but if you get some of the other options, it's perfectly fine. The other options are stuff like Static Shiv, Rageblade, and Guardian Angel. I see those being built really often because the Guardian Angel and Static Shiv can be flexed into Kai'Sa if you decide to swap into the Socialite build. These 2 builds are really similar to each other, but we'll go over the Socialite build right now. This one, if you get a Tahm Kench early, and the Socialite Hex is either in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd row, he's a really solid carry to farm a lot of items with, and you often win a lot of games by just having 3 items on every single champion that you have because, well, that's the whole main reason of running Socialite Tahm Kench. If you don't get that option, Kai'Sa is going to be the main primary carry, or like your first choice. GA, Archangels, Morello, going to be your first options there. Other options, as we discussed before, like Static Shiv is usable on Kai'Sa, Spear of Shojin is usable on Kai'Sa, Rageblade's usable on Kai'Sa. You really just need the Morello plus the GA, or like a QSS for Kai'Sa to really shine. Victor's going to be your secondary option, and then Akali's going to be your last option, I'd say. Ideally, you just play whoever you get to 2-star, and pretty much go from there. This one, you want either a win streak or a mercenary start to get into, because like the legendary, you really need it to be 2-starred to be really, really effective. Onto the next build, we have the Syndicate build. So 2 ways to play this, as we discussed before. You either do standard leveling to go for Akali carry, or you go reroll Shaco 3. So you do that at level 7, and you just roll until you hit Shaco 3-star at level 7. But I think the Akali version is a little better. It's really close. It's hard to tell. It depends on your game. If you get a lot of Shacos, go for it. Like, who cares which one's better, because you can only choose what you go for based on what you get in the game. So if you have, say, let's say 5 or 6 Shacos by the time you are level 7, like definitely go for like a Shaco reroll. Anything lower than that, it's kind of debatable. You can choose based on how much gold you have and based on your life total. If you are like super low health, you can't really afford to reroll for Shaco. You kind of have to level up and play extra units to try to live. So it's going to really depend on your game. But I hope that these tips will help you decide like what games to go for Shaco 3 and which ones to go level 8 or 9 with and try to play for Akali. Morello's really good because it's built in a lot of comps. Twisted Fate can hold that in the early game, and then you could swap it on Braum or Seraphine in the later parts of the game. Akali's best items are definitely going to be Infinity Edge, Archangels, then Ionic Spark, but you could build GA on her as well. It depends how many Syndicates that you have. Like, if you have 5 or 7 Syndicates, she doesn't, like, need the GA. It's still helpful, but with these items, she kills everything before needing, or before dying. You have to, like, get unlucky to die with the Akali in a lot of cases, but like sometimes like stupid stuff happens and she dies randomly. In those cases, if it's happening a lot, put a GA on her. But I like having triple damage on both my Akali and my Shaco. You'll notice here, like, Infinity Edge, Last Whisper, Runons. I don't have stuff like RFC, I don't have stuff like GA, I don't have stuff like Bloodthirster, because Shaco can just, you want to focus on him just killing stuff with the damage items there. Oh yeah, and all that is because, like, the Syndicate trait, if you read it, it gives Omnivamp, and it gives a lot of resistances. So they have a lot of built-in tankiness and lifesteal, so you just want to focus on damage. That's why you build them as such. So onto the next build, we have Arcanist Lux. One augment that is really, really good with this build is, I believe it is called Pandora's Box or something like that. It's the one that shuffles your items on your bench every round. And the reason why it's so good is because getting perfect item Lux is the only thing that matters on this comp. Well, Lux 2 plus perfect items. Like, I've had games where I have Vex 1 for some reason, but a Lux 2 with perfect items, and I just win all those games because Lux kills everything before Vex even matters. And you want to try to go like 6 or 8 Arcanists in those cases. Another unit that's super important is Yuumi, because Yuumi gives Lux the Academy buff, which again gives her more AP to buff her up a lot. Do not play Victor carry, he is like a bait. Common mistake I see people making is playing Victor carry and Arcanist. They like hit a Victor 2, then they sell their Lux and put their items on Victor. Never do that, do me a favor. The only situation where you play Victor carry is if you have 4 Scholar from like augments, and that is pretty much going to be it. Focus on the Lux, focus on the Vex items. Victor is just really just a random unit you put in to get 6 or 8 Arcanists in the late game. If the Socialite hex is good, I like running Taric a lot. I also like using Taric as my Arcanist emblem carrier because he throws out like giant heals whenever he has it, so I really like using him there. But if the Socialite hex is anywhere on the back line that's not the very corner, I really like running Taric because Lux just has 20% more damage, and that's exactly what she needs to get the resets on her ultimate. Another augment that's really good on her is Thrill the Hunt, so the healing augment, that's going to be the best one for you there, because, yeah, again, she's so reliant on resets that it's just better than Celestial, so if you're ever in that situation where you're deciding between the two, Thrill the Hunt is going to be the way to go. Urgot, this build hasn't really changed. Like, it's just the same build, guys. I'm just gonna skip this. It's just go standard leveling. You could go into this from Mercs, Yordles, Win Streak, whatever. Pretty much if you get like a decent bruiser start, you could play this also. Last Whisper, Runons on Urgot, GA is pretty good, or like a Giant Slayer, 3rd item. And then late game's gonna be Jinx or your Tahm Kench to farm items with. Pretty much nothing else to say there. You guys have seen this comp for like forever now. Sniper Jhin, this comp is really weird, I would say. It's really lobby dependent on whether this is good or not. If a lot of people are playing really beefy front lines, like, Jhin's gonna be really good. If they're playing like Assassins or Lux, he's gonna be really bad. You're just gonna have to scout during your games to see whether a lot of people are playing Arcanists or if a lot of people are playing Assassins, because that's gonna determine whether you can go Jhin or not. He also has a bad matchup into Kai'Sa, but literally every comp has a bad matchup into Kai'Sa, so I'm not gonna count that. The way to beat Kai'Sa players is that only one of them is gonna hit Kai'Sa 2, hopefully, and then you should be able to beat the other guy. But yeah, you could run this with Sion tank. This version I have here has Braum, Blitz, and Jace, but you could run Sion instead of Jace and Caitlyn. You don't actually need the sniper buff to make Jhin work. So yeah, you could just take out the enforcers if you want to play Sion, or if you hit a Sion 2-star, because Sion's CC right now, not gonna lie, he is very, very powerful. He just CCs your entire team if you're grouped up, and a lot of people are grouping up, so yeah. But 2 options here in case you guys wanted to check out the sniper build. Now we're into the B tier. That's pretty much it for the A tier. Again, there are like, what, 7 comps that are like all really playable. So look at your early game, try to get Mercenaries, try to get Yordles, and then whoever you 2-star, try to play that build. Onto the next build, we have the B tiers. First up, we have Assassins with Katarina carry. Again, very similar items as the Akali build. So if you get a Katarina 2-star early and you're winning a lot of rounds with her, it's going to be really great. However, only go for Reroll Katarina if you actually keep getting more copies of Katarina. Don't just like force this build, because oftentimes you'd rather just level up and hit the Akali and then play Akali instead, and then play the Syndicate build that we were talking about before. Next up, we have Samira Imperial Reroll. You could also do Talon. I write that out here. Samira's best item, Assassin Spat. She's playable without it. You just want like a Last Whisper to kill all the tanks instead. But essentially, like 3 or 5 Imperial or 2 or 4 Challenger is going to work great for you. Talon's going to be a good carry with QSS, RFC, and Infinity Edge. And then Scion's going to be your main tank. Make sure you put Blitzcrank on the opposite side of Talon. He doesn't have to be all the way in the corner. He could be like up here or something like that. Just make sure that he's on the opposite side of your Talon. The way to play this comp is to do a reroll. So if you're going for Samira 3-star, reroll at level 7. And if you're going for Talon, reroll at level 6. Now on to Protector reroll. Only play this comp, and I mean only play this comp if you have good augments for it. Even if you have 3-star everything, you're going to lose if you don't have good augments. What are good augments? Reroll augments that give you a lot of gold, first aid, and then like Protector, Mutant, and like ignore the Academy part. That's for Katarina, so focus on like these guys if you want good augments. So essentially, first aid is like make or break for this comp, because getting the extra shielding from the Protector buff on either your Kassadin or Garen is just completely game changing, because first aid kit just gives so much more extra healing and shielding that it just makes the comp go from like B tier to like A tier. But again, that doesn't matter, because you can only play this comp if you get a really good start for it, which is getting a lot of copies of the Garen and the Kassadins, or like a crap ton of Kog'Maws really quickly. That's why the reroll augments are really helpful in order to get those 3 stars up and running, because you need to be able to knock people out before the mercenary guy cashes out, and then like the one random high roller who's been win streaking all game, kind of like fast 9s and uses gold advantage to get 2-star legendaries. You kind of have to like spike really hard by hitting all your 3 stars early in order to not get knocked out later, because this comp will fall off compared to all the other late game builds. But again, you don't play this comp every game. You only play it with specific situations that I laid out just before. So just keep that in mind when going for this, because when it works out super, super well. But when it doesn't, like some games you have like 3-star everything and still go 7th or 8th. And it's because you probably didn't have the right augments, or you did not spike the 3 stars early enough. Next build up, we have the Tristana build. Reroll Tristana, it's pretty good. You just need specific items on her, but like I'd rather play the Jhin build in most cases, which is why it's in the B tier, because it's just easier to do. Rerolling is so risky, because if you do not hit, you are for sure going 8th. If you do hit, it's not a guaranteed first, you know? So like the risk versus the payoff is just very uneven. That's why it's like lower in the B tier than the Jhin build. And they use the same items, so you might as well just play Jhin instead of going for Tristana. Next up, we have Mutant Malzahar. Mutant Malzahar is going to be interesting, because I laid out here a lot of different situations on what items to go based on your mutant traits. So you guys can check that all out if you want to read all this. I'll go over it briefly, but this is on my website, bunnymuffins.lol/meta. And then also, while we're doing self-promotion, go ahead and subscribe below if you have not already. But essentially, like I talk about here, we have the Metamorphosis, and then I list out the trait here, and then I tell you Malzahar is like good with Hextech Gunblade with this augment, because this one gives everyone a lot of tanky stats. Morello's pretty good, and then an AP item, and then Redemption Cho is great, because once you get all the armor and MR buffs stacking, like tankiness is all that matters. And then because you have super tanky guys, you want the Morello to kind of slowly kill everyone down. AP builds are not as important in this specific mutant trait compared to the other ones. Next up, we have Voracious Appetite. Mutants grow stronger each time an ally dies, so you get more AP and AD that way. Malzahar's still a good carry there. And of course, like I make a note up here, like Kai'Sa can carry with every mutant trait, so like you're always aiming for Kai'Sa carry, but you don't always get it every game. So I'll let you know which times to go for like Kog'Maw carry, which time to go Malzahar, which time to go Cho'Gath. But ZZ Rod's a really good item in this one, because you get more value from the guys dying. So every time someone dies, you gain AP and AD. So the more units you have, the more buffs you get. So ZZ Rod's really good. The target dummies are really good. And another item that's good here, I forgot to add it, is Guardian Angel for Malzahar, because a lot of times he'll be in the GA stasis, and his ability, which is a damage over time, just kills everyone by the time he respawns, because of Voracious Appetite. He'll have like 5 billion AP, and then yeah, they'll just die from him in his stasis, because like everyone's dead, so he has too much AP to kill everyone. Next up, we have Synaptic Web. Blue buff is insane on Malzahar in this mutant trait, because he will spread the plague faster than the Omicron variant. So yeah, like There's not much else to say here because blue buff just makes him auto cast, auto cast, auto cast. And yeah, Morello's going to be really great with that too, or like AP. Either builds works. And also Mutant Spatula is insane on units like Lux because lowering Lux's mana pool makes her just ult every single second. So if you ever get a Mutant Spatula on this particular mutant trait, Lux is going to be destroying everyone there. Voidborn, this one's like the most rounded one. I'd say like you could pretty much do anything with this one because it's like the most neutral mutant buff. Bio-leeching similar to that. It gives your whole team Omnivamp. So this one is great in non-mutant comp. So if you're running like Kaisa with Socialites, you could run 3 mutants instead of running 3 Socialite because this gives a lot of healing and it gives it to your entire team. So Kaisa is going to be really strong in those types of builds. Cybernetic enhancements, a lot of people don't like this in lower elo, but I've seen a lot of higher elo players use this a bunch. It's like it's like one that's used for win streaking a lot, and sometimes people use this if they get a lot of different items. For example, if you have like Cho'Gath items, Kog'Maw items, and Malzahar items or something like that, and Kaisa items, you could kind of spread the love, you know, and then use the cybernetic enhancement to like pretty decent effect. So that would be like what you do with this one. Like, I'll be honest, this one's less straightforward than like Metamorphosis or Voracious Appetite, but it's still a pretty good augment, and I think it's pretty underrated for most players. Hyperadrenal Glands, this one's really fun because this one is the one that gives mutants basic attacks a chance to trigger additional attacks, and you could do carry Cho'Gath with this, with like attack damage items, and he kind of just kills everything, which is really fun to see. Next build in the B tier we have is the Scrap build. The only item that matters is the Morello on Echo, and then I list out the items for which items to put on which scrap unit. So Bow on Ezreal, Tear on Echo, Defense on Blitz and Trundle. I prefer Negatron on Trundle and Chain on Blitzcrank, and then whatever leftover item you have on Janna. And you could also build a lot of Jinx items. Bloodthirster and GA are pretty good because she jumps in the air and then lands in the middle of their team, so you need some survivability. Or you could do stuff like Runon's Last Whisper. It depends on what type of team you have. But that is going to be it for the B tier. We're going to skip the C tiers. All of these are viable. You just have to reroll at the right time and place. So just keep that in mind there. I'm going to go over the items now because I did a bunch of updates there. Carousel Priority, it really depends on what comp you're playing, but in most of the games I'm seeing, everyone is going for tiers because the Ice Cream build is so popular. Tier also builds stuff like Static Shiv, it builds Archangels, Redemption's pretty good, Shojin's good in the Ice Cream build as well. Hand of Justice is playable, even though it's not that great in my opinion. But yeah, a lot of people are starting the tier. Glove's good for Assassins, it's good for the Arcanist build, it's good for any comp that needs a Last Whisper or QSS, so that's why it's rated highly as well. Swords for GA and all the attack damage builds such as Jhin, Urgot, and Yone, and also the Assassins. Rod's good for Arcanists, it's good for Morello. Every comp needs a Morello, so that's why it's also rated highly. Same reason why Belt is pretty decent as well. Bow's just used for Yone and Urgot, and then that leaves us with the Chain and Negatron being pretty low priority so far in this patch. But yeah, we have like a couple more days of the patch. I did a quick update to the item quadrant here because a lot of things have changed. Like Chalice is really good now. But most things are, again, it's pretty situational, so I'd pay more attention to the like items in the actual comps because it's like everything's super situational. It just depends on what team you're running. So that is going to be the priority there. But yeah, just as a summary, S and A tier is really similar. I don't want to hear anyone in the comments be like, oh, why isn't this S tier? They're all really similar. So it's like pretty much any comp is good. It's mainly your early game that matters the most. And then after that, it's whatever you hit on your roll downs. So with that in mind, like Yone, Innovators, Socialite Random, Syndicates, Arcanists, Chemtech, Urgot, and Snipers. If you have like a lot of swords, go for Snipers, go for the Assassin build, go for the Yone build. You could do like a Fiora carry as well. If you have a lot of tiers and AP items, the Innovator build's going to be good, Socialite build's going to be good, and the Arcanist build is going to be good. So again, depends on your items. I just like don't prioritize the defensive items as much and just focus more on offense right now. But let me know what you guys thought about this in the comments below. Hopefully this will help you out in your climb this week. New patch on Wednesday, I believe. So I'll come out with a patch preview on Tuesday. So I hope to see you guys there. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe, and of course smash that like button. Each like is an LP I gain before the next video.